Hi, welcome back. I'm the Book Guy, and today we're talking about the Codex Alera series by Jim Butcher. I'm so excited for this one. Jim Butcher is best known as the author of the Dresden Files, so these days if you're picking up Codex Alera, it's probably because you've tried his other series. But you've got to understand this up front. Codex Alera is so different to the Dresden Files. This is a high fantasy world largely inspired by the Roman Empire and Pokemon. Yes, we'll come back to that. So Codex doesn't have Dresden's focus on mystery and crime and humor, and instead focuses on military warfare, political scheming, and international tensions between rival nations. So it's not just a different genre, it's a lot of different content as well. Is it any good? Well, put it this way. I read the series in 2021, and I was gonna review it, kept putting it off, and when I finally found time to review it in 2026, I figured I would reread the first book to refresh my memory. Next thing I know, I've reread all 6 books. I just couldn't help it. I just genuinely enjoyed reading the series again. It's a lot of fun. That said, I think the series is good. Not great, and far from mediocre either, just good. In my opinion, this is a 4-star series. I think it focuses on a lot of cool action and fantasy entertainment, but does not have a lot of deeper themes, or complex character arcs, or big emotional peaks. I almost want to call this a light-hearted series with low emotional stakes, which may be exactly what you're looking for. So still, fair warning, I'm going to include some criticisms today in amongst all the praise. So let's dive into this series. We'll look at strengths and weaknesses, spoiler free, and we'll see if it's something that you might like to read. Welcome to Alera, a massive Roman-esque empire in the world of Kana. The Alerans bond with Furies, small nature spirits to gain powers and abilities. The Aleran Empire has stood strong for nearly 1,000 years, thanks to the strength of the Furies and the Aleran Legion. Yet the Empire is crumbling due to internal corruption and new external threats. The Cursor Amara is a young spy, barely graduated from the academy. She is tasked with finding a traitor within the political senate who may be plotting rebellion against the emperor. In the frontier state of Calderon, the healer Isana is concerned that the savage Marat tribes may be returning to her valley home once again. Meanwhile, a young Aleran boy, Tavi, is the only 15-year-old in the empire who has still not bonded a single fury. He alone has no magic, but this may just force him to rely on his own instincts instead. As the Aleran Empire faces threats from all around, our heroes must find the fury within. Now, before we dive deeper into this world, we need to address the elephant in the room. So where did this series come from, and why is it so different to the Dresden Files? Well, Jim Butcher has talked about this a couple of times in a few different interviews, most notably this one with Daniel Green from 5 years ago. Jim always wanted to be a writer, and in his early 20s he joined a writer's group. And as a cocky young hotshot, he was frustrated that fantasy wasn't taken very seriously, and he wrote a contemporary short story about a wizard called Harry Dresden just to prove to his teacher how easy it was to write contemporary fiction. And his teacher said, "This is the first time you've written something publishable."
Damn it! Terry proved the wrong point.
Butcher then worked for a few years to write the first Dresden books and to find an agent. By 2002, he had the first 3 Dresden books published. That's when he decided to return to the high fantasy genre, his first true love. The idea for Codex Alera came from a writing challenge on the Del Rey Online Writers Workshop in 2002. Jim Butcher was saying in a forum that you don't need the perfect idea to write a book, you just need to do the work. And someone challenged him to write a story using only bad ideas. Jim said, "Bring it on, give me 2 bad ideas," and the challenger said, "The Lost Roman Legion and Pokemon." And 2 years later, Jim Butcher published The Furies of Calderon. So it's also worth noting that he wrote this series very early in his career, and he wrote it very quickly. So book 1 was published in 2004, and book 6 was published in 2009, literally 6 years later. He also published 6 Dresden novels during the same time period. The guy was just chained to his desk, pumping out books.
Is it possible to learn this power?
But many people who've read the Dresden Files say Dresden gets better as it goes, and some of the earlier books are a bit weaker. And they say this is also largely true for Codex Alera, that it gets better as it goes. But enough context, let's get into it. Alera is very much inspired by the late Roman Empire, so not the Golden Age Rome of Julius Caesar or Marcus Aurelius. This is Rome in its final stages of decay and collapse, so think the Emperor Caligula. This is perfect for those of you who spent a lot of time thinking about the Roman Empire. So we see all aspects of Roman culture on display: the legionnaire warfare, an emperor and the Senate, and a society that's split between landowners, free citizens, and slaves. They also have all the classic technology from this time period, so like aqueducts, catapults, ballistics, etc. It's a whole lot of fun. This world also has several different fantasy races, so you can see it on the map here. So Alerans have their big central empire in the middle of this continent. Up on the right here is Maratea, where the Marat tribes live. Up north is the Icemen behind the massive walls, and across the sea in the west is where the Kanim, the Wolfmen, live in Canea. The series spends a lot of time world building these different races and their cultures, quite extensively too. So all 6 books focus a lot on the Aleran culture in particular, where the first 2 books will give special focus to the Marat tribes on the eastern frontier. Now, the Marat are technologically simple, nomadic people who live in tribes and connect very much with nature. Then books 3 and 4 focus a lot on the Kanim, a race of 7-foot-tall giants with wolf heads. So these guys are based on the classic Roman myth of the cynocephalus, the wolf's head on a man's body. These guys appear at first like animals, but they're actually brilliant thinkers, strategists, and even philosophers. And books 5 and 6 then deal a lot with the Iceman tribes in the north, who we know next to nothing about at the start of the series. Now, I want to acknowledge something here. See, I love Roman mythology. I've traveled to Rome because I'm obsessed with its history. But let's face it, Roman history is very popular among a certain group of people these days. You know, those people who love the Roman salute.
Hail Caesar!
Hail!
Yeah, and if you pick up book 1, you'll see this glorious, noble Roman civilization that's surrounded by savage barbarians on all sides, and you might think, oh geez, is this some white supremacist shit? But no, it's really not that at all. Now, at first glance, yes, we do see that Alera is perceived by its citizens as the greatest civilization in Kana, with incredible technology and power. And then the Marat tribes are so evil, they literally practice cannibalism,
and is in fact frowned upon in most societies.
Yet as the story progresses, we see that Alera has a bunch of internal problems, like slavery, corruption among the elite, even widespread sexual assault. Where the Marat tribe, on the other hand, have an honor-based society where lying literally doesn't exist because everyone's so honest. So it's a very nuanced take on culture, showing that every culture has strengths and weaknesses, and that one culture is not inherently superior to another. In fact, this is just a major theme of the whole series, that the bad guys consider Alera perfect and everyone else savage. But then the good guys take the time to learn from the other peoples, learn their language and customs, and forge bonds of friendship. And we see how they become smarter and stronger for developing these alliances. And when these races work together, it's like Avengers Endgame, where they all show up at once. I know that's all a bit of a tangent, but I actually just really love how this story plays on our expectations of civilization versus barbarism. Remember, in real history, the Romans just called everyone who was not them barbarians. That included Carthage, a rival empire that was literally of the same level of advancement as them. Because, you know, history is written by the victors, and then they describe all their enemies as savage and douchebags.
Oh man, I hate those guys.
Although we do have one race that is pure evil, the Vord. And I won't say much about them today other than the Vord are the monsters of this world, like a swarm of insects. And they are pretty pretty damn scary and also pretty awesome. So yes, that's 5 different fantasy races in this world, and it's a big focus of the world building. Now let's talk about the magic. So the Furies are little nature spirits comprised of the elements of, you guessed it, water, earth, fire, and air. Hi, Editor Michael here, and Fitz the cat, of course. Oh, isn't he cute? I made a mistake. There's actually 6 branches of magic, not 4. There's also metal crafting and wood crafting, which I, of course, knew about, but I actually thought they came under earthbending. You know how, like, metal crafting comes under earthbending in Avatar: The Last Airbender? But no, it's a separate, distinct thing. Anyway, that's why we fact-check. So 6 branches of magic. The Alerans bond with these spirits from a young age and summon these powers for their own. They name their spirits and then give them verbal instructions to make use of their powers. Little bit like Pokemon. That said, the Furies don't really have personalities, so they're not really like Pokemon, and they're not like Stormlight Archive, where they bond with sentient beings that talk to each other. These Furies are really just forces of nature. Although, before someone yells at me in the comments, yes, there is such a thing as greater Furies, but that's later in the series and kind of a spoiler, so just for now, just know that the regular day-to-day Furies don't have sentience. There's a ton of interesting uses for this magic. So air Furies can be used to achieve flight, and water Furies give someone strong empathy and even telepathic communication. Fire Furies are popular among the Legionnaires, and Earth Furies can create statues and golems capable of following limited instructions. So the series continually plays around with these ideas, and each book keeps pushing the limits of what Fury power can do. A lot of the more advanced magic requires proper Fury crafting, so this is next level type stuff. It's a little bit like the Wheel of Time, where you weave patterns together with the one power to create something more sophisticated. It's not just like Fireball. Instead, it's like, I'm going to craft my front door so it only lets in my friends.
What's the Elvish word for friend?
So Fury crafting is the more advanced level stuff. However, there is a lot of gaps in this magic system, which could be quite frustrating at times. So it's really unclear how someone gets a Fury. I'm pretty sure we don't actually see someone claim a Fury until, I can't say without spoilers, but, you know, late, very late into the series. This is a big deal because one of the major plot points of this story is that our protagonist, Tavi, doesn't have a Fury. And as a reader, I'm like, well, why doesn't he go get a Fury? Can't he walk down to the local shop and buy one? I don't know how this works. Another gap in the magic system is just explaining the difference in power levels, because all of the rulers of Alera are crazy powerful. Each senator, and especially the High Lord Gaius, are basically a one-person army. But it's never explained why some people are stronger than others, or why it's the rulers who are stronger than the commoners. Maybe they have more time to study and practice Fury crafting, or they can afford a better education, which helps them somehow. Or maybe it's a natural gifting that's passed on genetically. Again, it's just really vague. You'd think that they would share some of this extreme magical knowledge with, like, oh, I don't know, the frontline soldiers. But ultimately, that's the point. This is a pretty medium to soft magic system. It's meant to just give us some really cool action sequences. And I found that if I started thinking about it too much, I did start seeing these holes. That said, magic affects every race differently. So only Alerans can bond with the Furies, but then the Marat can bond with animals and even other people, which achieves all sorts of things. Their abilities change depending on which animal they've bonded with. Meanwhile, the Khanum, the wolf people, have blood magic. So blood is volunteered to the priests, or else not volunteered, allowing Khanum priests to do some pretty serious damage. And then the Icemen have some unique elemental powers as well. You know, it's right there in the name, Iceman. So there's several other light magic systems woven into the story. So despite the magic being a bit on the soft side, there's still many layers and ideas here to appreciate. So this is another major difference to the Dresden Files. This series has 3 point-of-view protagonists.
There's 3, actually.
There's Tavi, the young boy with no Furies. Although the other 2 protagonists have painfully similar names. There's Amara and Isana. Even in writing this script, I had to go and double check that I had the right name for which character. I just remembered that Amara was the spy and Isana is the healer, but the names are just so similar. In fact, this happens more than once. We actually have 4 characters in this series that have a name that starts with the letter M. So Max, Marcus, Magnus, and Miles. This is also a major thing in the Dresden Files, by the way. Jim Butcher just loves character names that start with M, like Morgan, Murphy, Michael, Marcone, Mab, Maeve, Molly, Martin, and of course, Butters.
It's a terrible joke.
I'm getting off track here. So our first protagonist is Tavi, the only Aleran without magic. He starts off as a sheep herder on the frontier, and he gets bullied for being a freak without a fury. He has to compensate by always being smarter and more creative. Amara is the spy protagonist, so she starts out as quite naive, believing she's protecting a noble and pure empire. Amara soon realizes that the Aleran Empire is in an active state of decay, and she has to reevaluate her loyalties. And Isana is the healer on the frontier. She's also Tavi's aunt, by the way. So Isana is a leader within her community, and her her water furies, it gives her empathy for all of those around her, but she may realize that she can't actually save everyone. Now here's the thing, I think the character work is probably the lowest point in the series. It's not awful, it's just very mid.
Yeah, basic.
Because all of these protagonists do function quite nicely in the story. They're effective viewpoints and they're sympathetic, but they're just not that deep, and they don't really have character arcs either.
Is it time for arcs yet?
I mean, Tavi's arc is that he grows up and becomes a man, and Amara's arc is that her ethics are challenged. This isn't a series where the characters deal with big emotional moments, which is bizarre to me because Dresden kind of is. But let's just consider this and overthink for a moment, because that's fun. Dresden has a lot of heart, but when you get down to it, it's really the second half of the Dresden Files that has all the really big emotional moments. And those books were all written after Codex Alera had finished. Isn't that curious? I think this is an area that Butcher has really grown as a writer over time. Nowadays, he just regularly breaks our hearts. But it does mean that Codex is a series that just didn't make me feel much attachment to the characters. That's why I describe the series as light-hearted entertainment. It's easy reading. So if you are looking for tons of fantasy action with not much heavy content, then you'll find plenty to enjoy. Still, it's worth noting the many villains in this series. So there are a lot of villains within the Imperial Senate.
I am the Senate.
Unfortunately, I think these politicians are all just vague tropes of cartoonish, power-hungry slime bags. There's not much unique here. However, there is one really good villain in this story. So I can't say his name because that's technically a spoiler, but he is a spy who is not actually trying to be a villain. He's actually trying so hard to save his beloved empire, and he will cross any moral line to do it. He is the quintessential the ends justify the means character, and honestly, I think I cared more about this guy than any other character. His moral complexity was the most interesting bit of character writing in the series to me. We always have 3 plots per book. So Tavi is the student and the soldier, where Amara is the spy, and Isana is the healer and the leader. So their 3 plots are always different, and they confront the book's scenario from multiple angles. But let's zoom out from characters a little bit and look at the wider series. One of the major reoccurring plots is rebellion. So there are senators who are going rogue and trying to seize power from the Emperor Gaius, who they all consider to be a weak leader. Yet these senators hide their rebellion so you can't tie anything to them directly. So there's a strong presence of a political fantasy, with the court of many rival fractions scrambling for power. Although this is one area where better character writing would have really improved things. These senators are either loyal or cartoonishly evil, where a good political fantasy has a whole range of moral alignments and shades of grey that create an environment where you don't really know who to trust, where here it's a little bit too predictable. It's still interesting, but more could have been done with it. I also talked a lot about political fantasy in reviewing Elliot Brooks's Dark Shores series, so if you want to know more about that particular subgenre of fantasy. Another major type of plot is the wars with other nations. So we have attempts at invasions where the Legion has to hold the line and manifest their fury power across these big military campaigns. This is the plot line that really shines in this series. This is the good stuff. It's fun, action heavy, has a ton of cool magic action, and some really creative ideas. So just no notes. The Roman fantasy warfare was just plain awesome, and every single occurrence of this plot was epic. Read this series if you want that. A few other plot lines are the negotiations with other races to try to work together.
The negotiations were short.
There's quite a few romances sprinkled throughout the series for all different characters. And there's one interesting plot line where a character tries to change the law to give slaves more rights. And there's a few epic quests into new realms and into hostile territories. So lots of different types of stories happening in this one. Still, let's talk about this one strange aspect of the series that's almost hard to define. This series is very lighthearted and entertaining, so there's not a lot of heavy content. Every time it looks like it's heading towards serious topics, it only brushes against it before going back to all the cool action sequences. I think Codex is perfect if you want to read something that's just enjoyable and doesn't make you think too hard about anything. That's a big reason why I ended up rereading the whole series without really intending to, because I've read a lot of heavy stuff lately and this was just easy reading. But I think that can also be a weakness. You see, 6 books is a lot of time to spend with the series that's a bit light and fluffy. Fun action is really good for a book or two, even a trilogy is great, but beyond that, it's harder to maintain interest. Both times I've read this series, I started losing interest by books 5 and 6. Not that those books were worse, if anything they might even be better, but it's hard to maintain interest in something that's just not very deep. Also, by keeping things so lighthearted, the story can miss out on theme. Theme is what really gives the story its heart and adds layers that keep you thinking about it long after the book has ended. I think the only 3 times this series gets anywhere near serious, well, one is Tavi not having magic and feeling like an outsider. That can certainly tug a few heartstrings. Also, the theme I mentioned about our heroes interacting with the other races and learning their language and customs. That was very well done. And the topic of slavery is well handled. So we see it being clearly framed as a bad thing, and there's a whole legal case to have slavery fixed, because they used to practice slavery as a way for people to work off their debt, and it ended up being straight up exploitation, where the debt never truly ended and the slave owner could get away with anything. So there are some serious topics in the books, but compare that to the Stormlight Archive, which is all about mental health, or Game of Thrones, which is like a commentary on morality. Instead, Codex is more like Terry Brooks's Shannara series, or Raymond Feist's Rift War. So just fun, entertaining fantasy. So it's something you've got to be in the mood for. What are your thoughts on this type of story? Is it interesting to you or not really interesting? I'd be curious to hear why. So this series has a great, nuanced depiction of fantasy races, which we've already discussed quite extensively. There's also a strong female presence in the story, with 2 of the 3 protagonists being women. So that's the reason why the audiobooks are narrated by Kate Redding. It's worth noting here, one very common complaint about the Dresden Files is that there's a lot of the male gaze, a very sexualized way of viewing women. And many people defend this in Dresden by saying, oh, that's not Jim Butcher, that's just Dresden's character perspective. Well, I gotta say, that defense kind of makes sense, since we don't really have that male gaze in Codex Alera. There's one instance in the second book where a bunch of teenage boys are checking out girls, but then in that context it kind of makes sense. So this does seem to support that argument. That said, there is a strange tendency for women in this series to be, and there's no other way to put it, horny all the time. It just happens so much. In fact, there's several almost comical instances of characters being in life and death situations and the woman's just like, how you doing? I'm a bit divided on this one. Like, on one hand, it looks a little bit like wish fulfillment, but on the other hand, it's very sex positive. Still, there is no LGBT in this series. In fact, the series is one of those that go out of its way to make sure it's super clear that everyone's straight, and how dare you even consider otherwise. There's one important topic I want to cover here. You see, this series features one romantic relationship that features a rather significant age gap. And how big an age gap are we talking? Well, I looked into this a lot because there's no exact number on the page, but fans have collated all the knowledge we have about these two characters, and at our best official guesses, the girl is aged 18 to 25, somewhere in that window, and the guy is between 33 to 35. It's ultimately up to you if you want to read about it or not.
Hi, me again. I wasn't going to commentate on the age gap thing, but apparently I just can't let it go. Look, the issue with age gaps between two consenting adults is not about the age number at all. It's about a power imbalance. Healthy relationships need equal power, so both people have their needs met. If one person has more power than the other, well, then they can very easily have more control over the other, which leads to abuse. It's a risky thing. And usually when someone's older, they also have a whole bunch of other things going for them, like they have more wealth, more education, a higher rank in society, and more property. So there's a whole range of ways that the deck can be stacked in their favor to give them control over their partner. But in the instance of Codex Alera, it's important to know too, he does have more age, but she has more education, and she has a higher rank as well, and then he has more property. So on an external level, they're on much more equal footing. Plus, they do have a healthy relationship ongoing into the series, so again, it's a nuanced topic, but I don't think it's such an automatic black and white, it's all good or it's all evil. I think age gaps are a risky thing that you got to be cautious about.
As for the content warning, there is a lot of action violence in this series, though it's not over the top and graphic, mostly just stylized violence. There are conversations about cannibalism, but we actually don't see it on screen. There's no swearing, everyone just says bloody crows instead. There is some sexual content, so there's quite a few intense making out scenes that fade to black with a bit of a wink. That said, there are several conversations around sexual assault. Again, we never see it on screen, but we hear about it occurring quite a bit. So one of the problems with Aleran culture is that people can commit rape and get away with it. And some characters are currently fighting to increase the punishment against offenders as a deterrent. So it's a topic that comes up a lot in conversation. Is the ending worth it? Yes, I think so. I think the series does keep getting better with each iteration, and Book 6 definitely ends with a hell of a bang. But as I've said earlier, I also struggled with both of my read-throughs because there just wasn't enough substance to keep me interested for 6 long books. So I leave it up to you. If you're enjoying all the cool magic and fantasy action and exploring the mythical races, then by all means, keep going. And how much should you try? So this is a tough one. There are a lot of fans that say Book 1 is not the best, but then I personally don't mind Book 1, and I think it's of similar quality to Book 2. However, I think that Book 2 is where the world really expands. We really dive into the politics of Alera and explore the magic system a lot more. I think it's just a case of Book 1 focused on the Calderon Valley and the individual characters, and then the book expands after that, and that's what people liked more about Book 2. Still, if you enjoyed Book 1, but thought maybe the story was a bit narrow in scope, I would encourage you to continue on to Book 2. So that's all I have for you today. That's Codex Alera. So good luck and happy reading. So let me know your thoughts on Codex Alera. If you've read it, did I represent it accurately or was I way off? Did I convince you to read it or not read it? And what other series would you like to hear me talk about? I'm open to discussion. Guys, if you want to support my work, please consider checking out my own books, The Immortal Investigations, an urban fantasy series that is spiritually similar to the Dresden Files. You can also check out my online shop and my Patreon, and subscribe if you want to see more extremely thorough book reviews like this one. I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoy a good book today. Bye!